At dinner that night, she said something so cruel, it shattered everything I thought I knew about family. And what hurt most, my son just sat there, silent. That was the moment everything changed. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if your love has ever been mistaken for weakness, then this story is for you. Watch until the end, because what came next, no one saw coming. Tap subscribe if you believe quiet women carry the loudest stories. Comment if this hits close to home. Share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. She doesn't cook, she doesn't clean, she just eats and naps all day. The words dropped like shards of broken glass across the dinner table. Lacey didn't even look at me when she said it. She just stabbed another forkful of chicken casserole like she was commenting on the weather. Across from her, my son Eric kept chewing. His eyes stayed glued to his plate. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He didn't even blink. In that moment, I realized the silence could be louder than the insult. I sat there with my fork halfway to my mouth frozen. My grandson Noah, who had just turned 6, went quiet too. He didn't understand the words, not fully. But kids know when something's wrong. The air turned heavy, still, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from peace, but from pressure, from a long history of being held back, held down. I didn't say anything. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind them that I was 66, that my knees ached every time I climbed those stairs to the laundry room, that my wrists swollen from arthritis made it hard to lift a full pan or twist a mop. I didn't mention the meals I had made, the times I picked up after Noah, or the countless loads of laundry I folded without being asked. No one asked anyway. Instead, I carefully placed my fork back down on the edge of my plate. I reached for the dish towel I had folded earlier that morning and began collecting empty plates from the table. Lacey didn't stop me. Eric didn't thank me. And Noah, sweet boy, just stared down at his corn like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to talk. I washed the dishes that night slower than usual, not because I was tired, but because I needed something to do with my hands. I needed to feel useful, even if they had already decided I wasn't. Later, I lay awake in the guest room, a glorified storage closet, with one twin bed and a single window that didn't open. I could hear Lacey and Eric laughing in the living room, the clink of wine glasses, the TV humming some sitcom I'd never been invited to watch. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me cracked, not from that one moment, but from years of slow erasure, years of being helpful, until I wasn't, years of being needed, until I became background noise. I thought about leaving that night. I didn't. Not yet. But something shifted. I had spent so long trying to stay small, to not take up space, to be easy to live with. But when your own child lets someone speak to you like that and you say nothing back, what are you staying for? They thought I was just someone who ate and napped. They had no idea whose house they were living in. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night, not a minute. The ceiling fan above my bed clicked with every rotation, a soft rhythmic reminder that time was still moving, even when I felt stuck in place. I stared up at it, eyes wide open, while laughter drifted in from the living room. Eric, Lacey, together, happy, like nothing had happened, and maybe for them, nothing had. But something had broken in me, quietly, finally. By 4:15 a.m., I was dressed. I moved around the room like a ghost, no lights, no noise. I folded the thin blanket I'd been sleeping under and placed it neatly at the foot of the bed, just like my mother taught me. In a Ziploc bag, I packed the most important things I owned: my marriage certificate, a copy of my husband's will, and an old photograph from our wedding day. He was laughing in it. God, I hadn't seen that smile in decades. I kissed the photo, slipped it in. I didn't pack much else. No one was awake when I left. I didn't want them to be. I left the house key on the kitchen counter next to the same dish towel I had folded the night before. The irony of it made my chest ache. I used to think my love language was food-folded laundry and showing up without being asked. Turns out they thought that made me a maid, a burden. I didn't leave a note. I didn't want to explain anything to people who'd already stopped hearing me. Outside the street was dark and damp. The air had that cool weight early mornings carry in Ohio right before the sun pushes through. My knees complained as I stepped down the porch, suitcase in one hand, purse in the other. I ordered an Uber. I didn't call anyone, not even my sister in Indiana. I just left. The driver was young, couldn't have been older than Noah's preschool teacher. He glanced at me through the rearview mirror, probably wondering why a woman in her 60s was getting picked up before sunrise with a suitcase and no small talk. He didn't ask. I didn't offer. I had one destination in mind, Thomas Green, attorney at law. He'd been my husband's best friend, the one who stood beside us when we bought that house, the one who handled the paperwork when Jack passed, the only person outside our family who had ever told me plainly, if you ever need anything, you call me first. And now, I needed something. The waiting room light buzzed overhead as I sat there at 5:52 a.m., too early for business hours, but too far gone for shame. I watched the sun rise through the front window, bathing the sidewalk in orange gold. For the first time in years, I felt like I had momentum. I wasn't running away. I was walking towards something. By the time Thomas unlocked the front door at 6:03, I was already standing. His eyes widened when he saw me. He didn't ask why I was there. He just opened the door, stepped aside, and said softly, "Come in, Gloria. Let's get you what you need." And as I stepped into that quiet office, lined with dusty law books and wood paneling, something in me stood a little taller. They thought I was just someone who ate and napped, but I remembered something they didn't. That house was never theirs to begin with, and I had the papers to prove it. Thomas didn't ask any questions, and I didn't offer any right away. He led me into his office, the same one I hadn't stepped foot in since Jack passed. Nothing had changed. Same worn leather chairs, same dusty bookshelf of legal codes, same framed photo of the two of them on the wall standing shoulder to shoulder at a 4th of July cookout nearly 30 years ago. Jack had been smiling in that picture too. That same free open laugh he used to save just for me before cancer stole it. Thomas poured coffee into a chipped blue mug and handed it to me. "2 sugars, no cream," he said like no time had passed. I cupped it in my hands and exhaled. "I need to know if it's still mine." He didn't blink. The house, I nodded. Jack put it in my name before everything. I never told Eric. He always assumed it was his. But I need to be sure now. Thomas stood without a word and crossed to the file cabinet near the window. He opened the second drawer, rifled through a few folders, then pulled out one sealed in a thick manila envelope. He placed it on the desk between us like it was holy. In some ways it was. He unsealed it, flipped through a few pages, and turned one toward me. There it was. My name, Gloria Ann Whitmore, listed clearly on the deed as the sole owner of the property on Sycamore Lane. Transferred to me on August 14th, 1998. Notarized, signed with Jack's shaky but determined hand just weeks after his diagnosis. I remembered that day now, how he insisted we go see Thomas, how I thought he was being morbid. But he wasn't. He was being protective. He was making sure I'd never be at the mercy of anyone else, not even our own son. I stared at the document like it was a long-lost letter from the past. My throat tightened. "I kept everything updated," Thomas said gently. "Property taxes, title insurance. It's still yours, Gloria. Has been all along." I let the weight of that sink in. For years I'd walked on eggshells in that house, in rooms I decorated with dishes I bought, folding sheets I once sewed by hand. I lived like a guest in my own story. But I wasn't a guest. I was the owner. "They told me I'd just take," I said quietly, "but I paid for everything with years." Thomas reached into the envelope again and pulled out the updated valuation. "If you want to sell," he said, "you'll get a good price. It's a solid neighborhood. Low crime, great schools." I laughed once dryly. "Great schools. That's why we picked it in the first place. Remember, for Eric. We couldn't afford private, but we wanted him to have a chance." Thomas nodded. "And he had one. Because of you." There was a pause, and then I spoke words I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. "I want to sell it." His eyes flicked up to meet mine. "You're sure?" I nodded, steady this time. "I don't want to fight. I don't want drama. I just want it done quietly. Let the paperwork speak for me." He didn't hesitate. "I'll draw it up." I sat there as he pulled open drawers and gathered forms, stapled packets, signed tabs. It was all mechanical, procedural, but to me it felt like something bigger, something holy. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was putting my name back on my life. As we finalized the preliminary paperwork, he asked, "Are you going to tell them?" I shook my head. "They'll find out when they get the letter." "Won't they try to fight it?" "They can try," I said. "But the law is clear and I'm not afraid anymore." He paused. "You could stay in the house. You don't have to go anywhere." "I don't want to stay where I'm tolerated," I answered. "I want to go somewhere I'm welcome." He didn't push. He just nodded. When I left the office, I walked taller. Not because I had taken something from them, but because I was finally reclaiming what had always been mine. Not just the deed, but my dignity, my voice, my space. I stopped by a small bakery on the way back to the care facility I'd been renting a room in, bought a paper bag of blueberry muffins, not because I needed them, but because I could. When I got back to my little room, I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the folder, and stared at the deed again. I ran my fingers over the name like it was an old wound finally healing. They thought I was just someone who ate and napped. But I was the woman who paid the mortgage, who folded the towels, who raised the boy who forgot me. But I hadn't forgotten myself. Not anymore. It took less than a week. Thomas worked quickly. He always did when something mattered. The house on Sycamore Lane, my house, was officially listed, shown, and under contract within days. Turns out young families would still pay top dollar to move into a quiet cul-de-sac with good schools, mature oak trees, and a short drive to the city. While the deal moved forward, I stayed quiet. I didn't call Eric, didn't text, didn't check social media to see if Lacey had posted another filtered photo of the dinner I probably cooked. I didn't need to say a word. The papers would speak for me. 3 days after escrow closed, certified letters were sent out, one from the bank, one from the real estate office, and one hand-delivered by a process server to their front door at 8:17 a.m. on a Wednesday. Notice to vacate within 30 days. I pictured it. Lacey standing in her robe, coffee mug in hand, jaw tight. Eric behind her, confused, defensive, silent as usual. The phone rang that afternoon. I didn't answer. It rang again that night, and again the next morning. On the third day, I got a voicemail, Lacey's voice tight with disbelief. "You sold our house, our home, without even talking to us. How could you do this?" I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat in the small garden behind the care facility, watching the wind stir the petals of a tired hydrangea bush. I sipped my tea. Let the silence breathe. Let the message echo, not in volume, but in meaning. They called it theirs. But it was never theirs to begin with. When I finally called back, I waited until the line connected, then said simply, "It wasn't your house. You lived there. I owned it. Now someone else will." Lacey didn't take that well. Her voice rose quickly, splintered with rage. "You're bitter. That's what this is. You're punishing us for one stupid comment." I paused. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted her to hear what I said next clearly. "I gave you a home for 6 years. I babysat. I cooked. I cleaned when I could. I stayed quiet when I shouldn't have. And all it took was one sentence from you to undo all of it. The truth is, you didn't want a mother-in-law, you wanted a maid. And Eric, he let you." Click. She hung up. No apology. No regret. Just fury. It didn't sting the way it once might have. It just confirmed what I already knew. I had made the right choice. The next morning, the phone rang again. This time it was Eric. He didn't yell. He didn't defend her. His voice sounded smaller. "Mom," he whispered, "we're going to lose everything." I waited. We can't afford a new place that quickly. The kids. Lacey's crying every day. I should have said something. I know I should have. But I didn't know what to do back then. I let him speak, let him unravel, because for once, it wasn't my job to clean up after him. When he finally ran out of words, I answered softly, "I'm not taking anything from you. I'm just reclaiming what you thought I forgot. I don't want your money. I don't even want an apology. I just wanted my silence back." There was a long pause. Then came the question I knew was coming. Is there any way to undo this? I stood up from the bench. My knees ached, but I stood anyway. Eric, I said, I raised you. I worked night shifts so you could have soccer cleats. I skipped meals so you could go on class trips. I paid your tuition when you dropped out and never paid me back. I never once kept score. But the day your wife looked me in the eye and said I was a leech, and you said nothing, that's the day the score started keeping itself. The line went quiet. I didn't need him to respond. For the first time, I had said what needed saying, not out of anger, but out of clarity. I wasn't rescuing anyone this time. I wasn't folding back into silence. I was choosing myself. That evening, I sat with the closing statement from the sale. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt balanced. I had lived in their house, they said, but the truth was they had been living in mine, rent-free, emotion-free, gratitude-free. Now they would move, start over, like I had. Only difference was I wasn't starting over in bitterness. I was starting with purpose, with something better waiting on the other side. They could call me heartless. They could call me cold. But they'd never be able to call me forgotten again. And that to me was worth far more than the bricks and paint of any house. After the house sold and the notices went out, I thought that would be the end of it. I imagined silence, distance, a clean break. But pain doesn't go quiet, not when it's been fed for years. Eric called every day for a week. At first I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. I needed time to let my voice return, not the one I used for bedtime stories or holiday dinners, but the one I hadn't heard since Jack died. The one that said, "You matter too." On the 7th day I picked up. His voice was soft, almost childlike. Mom. Just that word, heavy with years of not saying enough. I don't know where to start, he said. Lacey's a wreck. The kids are scared. We've been denied for 2 rentals already because our credit's a mess. I don't know what to do. I didn't say anything. I should have stopped her that night, he whispered, when she said what she said. I should have told her to shut up. I should have defended you. Still, I said nothing. He kept going, voice cracking at the edges. I guess I didn't think it mattered. I thought you'd always be there, like you always were. That was the problem, I thought. They all assumed I had nowhere else to go, like my love was tied to a front porch and a pantry of coupons. I messed up, he finally admitted. I let her treat you like that. I treated you like that. I let my own mother feel like she didn't belong in her own home. His voice broke completely. I'm sorry, Mom. It took everything in me not to cry. Not because I hadn't wanted to hear those words, but because I had once needed them so badly. And now they arrived like wilted flowers after the funeral. Eric, I said, my voice steady, I loved you before you could walk. I stayed up sewing your Halloween costumes. I worked late shifts so you'd have brand new cleats when your friends wore hand-me-downs. I watched you graduate from high school from the back row so Lacey could have the front. He sobbed quietly on the other end. I gave you everything I had, I continued, and I never once kept score. But when your wife looked me in the eye and called me a leech, and you didn't say a word, that's when the score started keeping itself. He was silent for a long moment. I wish I could go back. So do I said. But I can't keep living in wishful thinking. I've spent too many years apologizing for existing. I'm done. There was a pause. Then came the inevitable question. Is there any way you'd reconsider, even just for the kids? My heart clenched, not because I wanted to say yes, but because for most of my life I always did. Eric, I gave you 30 years of generosity. I fed you. I paid bills when you were unemployed. I covered your dental insurance when you lost yours. I helped pay for your wedding, for Lacey's surgery, for groceries during the pandemic. And you know what I got in return? Silence. A converted storage room. A single window I couldn't look out of. A table where no one made eye contact. And a daughter-in-law who decided I wasn't worth respecting. He began to speak, but I stopped him. I don't want your money. I don't need your gratitude. I just want my silence back. And selling that house, that was how I earned it. There was nothing left to say. I let that silence stretch. For the first time, it felt like mine. After a moment, I heard him exhale. I didn't know you were this strong, he said. I didn't either, I replied. He started crying again. Not the kind that begs forgiveness, but the kind that finally understands the depth of what's been lost. You don't hate me. No, I said honestly, but I won't rescue you either. If you want to honor what I gave you, live better, treat people better. That's how you say thank you now. Before he could answer, I added, and Eric, yeah, don't raise your daughter to think her grandmother disappeared because she was weak. She didn't vanish. She walked away. He promised he wouldn't. I believed him, because for the first time in years, he was listening. And for the first time in decades, I had spoken every word I'd kept locked in my chest. After we hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I made a cup of tea, the same kind I used to make on Sunday mornings with pancakes and syrup. Only this time I drank it for me. Quietly. Fully. Peace doesn't always come in forgiveness. Sometimes it comes in release. And mine had finally arrived. The money from the house sat in my account for 3 days before I touched it. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I wanted to be sure I wasn't doing it out of bitterness. I didn't want a cruise. I didn't want granite countertops or a beach condo in Florida. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to build something, not for Eric, not for Lacey, not even for myself, really. I wanted to build something for us, for the women like me who had given everything and been left with nothing. The ones who were called burdens when their backs started aching. The ones who were told they were just staying for a while but never invited to stay at all. So I started looking. It didn't take long to find it. A squat little duplex on the east side of Cincinnati. The siding was faded. The porch sagged. One of the windows was cracked and covered with duct tape. But the bones were good, and the street was quiet, and something in me whispered, "This is the place." The real estate agent raised an eyebrow when she saw me. "Most women your age are downsizing," she said. "Looking for something easier." "I'm not looking for easy," I said. "I'm looking for useful." I bought it that day. Cash. Then I gave it a name. The Porchlight House. Not a shelter. Not a facility. A home. Beneath the hand-painted sign I hung on the front gate, I had the words carved into wood. No one here proves their worth to stay. I hired a local handyman named Travis. His mother had died in a care home 3 years ago. He worked overtime without asking for extra pay once he heard what I was doing. We painted walls with colors that made people exhale when they walked in soft yellows, warm blues. We tore up the weedy backyard and planted herbs in rusted bathtubs. We hung string lights on the porch. We found mismatched furniture at estate sales, wooden rockers, velvet armchairs, a dining table long enough to seat 7. The first person I invited was Marcy, 74, evicted by her daughter after a hospital stay. She had nowhere to go. She came with nothing but a suitcase and a crocheted blanket she clutched like armor. I gave her the front room and told her there were no chores, no expectations, no apologies required. She cried the first night, then baked 3 dozen muffins the next morning for the entire block. Next came Lillian, 70, a retired florist whose son had moved to Arizona and left her behind. Then Nadine, who'd survived breast cancer twice, but still got pushed out of her son's basement because the kids needed the space. They each came with their stories folded inside them like old letters, and little by little they opened. We had no locks on bedroom doors, not because we didn't believe in privacy, but because we trusted each other in ways our own families had forgotten how to. We cooked together. We danced barefoot in the kitchen. We argued about how to season green beans, bacon grease, or olive oil. We cried during old movies and laughed during infomercials at 2 a.m. One night, as I folded laundry in the common room, Nadine said, "You know, Gloria, you didn't just build a house, you built a second chance." I smiled but didn't answer, because I knew deep down this was never about charity. It was about balance. For every Sunday dinner I'd eaten in silence. For every birthday I spent alone in a storage room. For every time I was told I was lucky to be housed while being erased. This was the answer I never got to give back then. And it was louder than anything I could have said in anger. One morning I stood on the porch with a coffee mug in hand, chipped on the rim, but still whole. The sun was rising behind the houses across the street, painting everything gold. Lillian was planting basil in a repurposed flower box. Marcy was knitting a scarf for no one in particular. and Nadine was humming some old hymn I half remembered from childhood. And I felt light. Not because the pain was gone, but because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. They used to say I just ate and napped. Now I fed people not just with food, but with peace. They said I didn't help. Now I had built a house where every corner whispered you still matter. I never imagined my second act would start with losing everything. But sometimes, that's exactly when it begins. Spring arrived quietly. At Porchlight House, we marked the change of season, not with calendars, but with small things. The return of birds to the trees behind the house, basil growing faster than we could cook with it. Marcy switching from knitting scarves to baby hats, just in case someone needs one. I thought the past was behind me, until he showed up. It had been nearly a year since I last heard his voice. Eric stood at the front gate on a Wednesday afternoon in early April, looking smaller somehow, not in size but in spirit. His hair had thinned, his shirt was wrinkled. He carried nothing but a manila envelope in one hand and a nervous look in his eyes. I saw him through the kitchen window. I didn't rush. I dried my hands on a dish towel, took one last sip of my tea, and stepped outside. He didn't speak at first. Neither did I. He looked at the porch, the string lights, the potted herbs, the rocking chairs, and then back at me. "I know I don't deserve to be here," he said quietly. I nodded once. Not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. He took a shaky breath. We lost everything. After the house sold, Lacey moved in with her sister. She said I should have fought harder, that I was weak. His voice caught. "I sleep on a friend's couch now. I pick up night shifts at the warehouse. I'm trying, Mom. I really am." I said nothing. "I didn't come here for money," he added quickly. "I just wanted to see it. What you did with it. What you made." I motioned toward the porch. "Sit down. If you're going to talk, you should do it in the shade." He followed me to one of the chairs and sat like he wasn't sure if it would hold him. I handed him a photo, one of my favorites. It showed the early days of Porchlight House, Marcy and Lillian painting the front steps, Nadine holding up a birdhouse Travis had helped her build me in the background, with a trowel in my hand and dirt on my knees. We were all laughing. Shoes kicked off. Joy not planned, just found. Eric stared at it for a long time. "You built this," he whispered. "With the money from the house you thought was yours," I said gently. His eyes stayed on the photo. "You didn't spend it on yourself." "No," I said. "I spent it on something that could grow." He nodded slowly, then looked at me. "Why now? Why let me in?" I paused, then answered the only way I could. "Because I ate your rice for 1 year," I said. "But you ate mine for 30. His mouth opened, closed. No words came. I stood. My joints ached, but my spine stayed straight. I walked into the house, returned with a small box, and handed it to him. Inside was a blank deed. Not to Porchlight House, not to anything with walls. Just an empty legal document. No name, no address, no history. He looked at it confused. "That's your second chance," I said. "A clean slate. Fill it with something worthy. Not for me. For you." Tears welled in his eyes. "Can I help here with the others?" "Volunteer." Maybe I shook my head. "We don't need your guilt. We need your growth." He sat there breathing that in. "You don't hate me?" he asked again, softer this time. "No," I said. "But I won't let you rewrite the story either. I'm not here to be rescued. I already did that for myself." He nodded slowly. And when he stood, he looked taller than when he'd arrived. He held the blank deed like it was gold, or maybe like it was responsibility. "I'll make it count," he said. "Good," I replied. "That's the only way you earn your way back, not to me, but to yourself." As he walked away, I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I felt settled. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was finally true. Later that night, Marcy made stew for the house, and Nadine insisted on playing her Motown vinyl, even though the record skipped. Lillian danced in socks across the wooden floor, her laughter rising into the rafters. I watched them from the kitchen doorway, my mug warm in my hands. Peace doesn't always arrive with music and forgiveness. Sometimes it slips in quietly on a porch where no one has to earn their place. And in that stillness, I whispered to myself, They thought I was just someone who ate and napped, but I was always more than they noticed. There's a drawer in my bedroom at Porchlight House, small and wooden, with a tiny brass knob that sticks sometimes. It holds what little I've kept birthday cards, old church bulletins, a photo of Jack in his army uniform, and one leather-bound notebook. Jack gave it to me on our 25th anniversary. The first page reads in his handwriting, "For the things we never want to forget." At first I used it for grocery lists and recipes, reminders, notes to myself. But over time it became something else. A quiet archive of love sacrifice and moments no one else saw. The night after Eric left, I opened it again. There it all was. 1992. Eric's braces, $1,800, 1999. Wedding gift, $5,000, 2005. Covered 3 months of rent, $3, $600, 2021. Groceries during the pandemic, $4,500, and on and on. I never kept track to prove a point. I kept track because no one else did. I made copies of every page and gave them to Thomas, my lawyer. Not as evidence, not for revenge. This isn't about making them pay, I told him. It's so if they ever ask why, I won't need to say a word. The numbers will speak for me. He nodded and slid the folder into his cabinet like it belonged there. Back at the house, I added one final entry, 2023, sold the house, built a new one, gave it to women like me, value incalculable. And then I closed the notebook for the last time. You see, people talk about legacy like it's marble plaques or family trees, but sometimes legacy is softer, quieter. It's a room where no one feels like a burden, a rocking chair that doesn't creak with judgment, a porch where your story gets to keep going. One morning I sat on that porch with Lillian. She was sipping chamomile tea and watching birds chase each other across the power lines. "You look peaceful," she said. "I am," I told her, for the first time in a long time. She smiled, then asked something that caught me off guard. "If you could go back, would you do it all the same?" I thought for a moment, then nodded. Even the silence. "No," I said softly. "I'd speak sooner. But I wouldn't yell. I'd leave sooner, but still gently. Because that's the truth about women like us. We don't want to burn bridges. We just want to stop drowning under them. If you're still listening, maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've cooked meals no one thanked you for. Maybe you've sat in living rooms where no one looked at you. Maybe you've spent holidays smiling through insult and injury because you were taught that peace matters more than pride. But hear me now. You are not too old. You are not too late, and you are not alone. I didn't tell this story to shame my son or to get sympathy. I told it because I spent too many years thinking if I stayed quiet, they'd love me more. But silence never bought me respect, it only bought them convenience. And the moment I stopped apologizing for existing, that's the moment I remembered who I was. So here I am, 67 years old, sitting in a rocking chair on a porch I built with my own name. Not waiting for a thank you, not hoping to be asked to stay, just living. And that, after everything, is enough. If you've ever been told you're too much or not enough, if you've ever walked out with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart, if you've ever been called a burden after a lifetime of giving, then welcome home. This story was never just mine, it's ours, and I promise you we still have chapters left. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Here, every quiet voice gets heard. Every forgotten story gets told. You are not alone.